The rain that night didn't fall. It roared. It came down in sheets, battering the cobblestone streets of Millbrook until even the streetlights blurred into trembling halos of gold and gray. The air smelled of wet earth, metal, and unfinished stories. James Harlan stood beneath a flickering lamppost, soaked to the bone. His coat was heavy, his boots filled with water, and in his trembling hand was an envelope, edges soft from being held too long. He had rewritten that letter 3 times. Each version started with, "I'm sorry," but none of them felt enough. "How do you apologize for breaking something you didn't know how to keep?" He whispered to himself. "She deserves better words than mine." The last train of the night was leaving the station. The post office clerk, a boy no older than 17, was locking the counter window. "Please," James said, breathless. "It has to go out tonight. It's for Eleanor Whitmore, 12 Riverside Lane." The boy hesitated, seeing the desperation in his eyes. He took the envelope. "I'll send it first thing." James exhaled a trembling breath and stepped back into the storm. He didn't know that night would define the rest of his life. As he walked away, lightning tore open the sky, and thunder rolled over the valley. That same night, the river swelled and broke its banks, swallowing the postal bridge whole. Hundreds of letters were lost to the current, including the one meant to save 2 hearts from silence. Eleanor Whitmore woke to the sound of the storm against her window. Her lamp flickered, casting soft light across her parlor, the same one where James had told her goodbye 3 months ago. She hadn't spoken his name aloud since. But every morning she'd glance at the mailbox outside her door, her breath catching at the thought that maybe today. She told herself she wasn't waiting, that she'd moved on, but her heart still beat in the rhythm of his absence. Every silence shaped like his name. On her kitchen table sat the teacup he used every Sunday. She'd washed it so many times the pattern had faded, but she couldn't bring herself to throw it away. That night she whispered into the rain, "Just tell me it wasn't all for nothing." The storm answered only with wind. When morning came, she dressed, made her tea, and sat by the window again. But no letter arrived. Days turned into weeks, weeks into years. Eventually, she stopped waiting at the window. But she never stopped waiting in her heart. Time, as it always does, softened the edges of her grief. Eleanor grew older, not bitter, just quieter. She kept her garden alive, taught at the local school, and helped neighbors raise their children. To the world, she seemed content. But every year on the anniversary of his departure, she walked to the hill overlooking the river, the place where they had first promised forever, and left a single wildflower there. No one knew why. Once a neighbor asked why she never remarried. She smiled faintly and said, "You can't replace the sound of a heartbeat you once memorized." At night, she'd read the same book over and over, Wuthering Heights, his favorite, and imagine him finishing the letter he never sent. 42 years later, the Millbrook post office was scheduled for demolition. Among the workers was a 17-year-old boy named Samuel, curious, restless, and fascinated by old things that told stories. In the attic, he found a trunk filled with dusty envelopes, long forgotten by time. Most were blank, ruined by moisture and mold, but one, tucked at the very bottom, was still sealed, yellowed but intact. It was addressed in faded ink, Miss Eleanor Whitmore, 12 Riverside Lane, Millbrook. Stamped, December 1963. He turned it over. The wax seal bore a small engraving, the initials J.H. Something about it made his chest tighten. He couldn't explain why, but he felt this letter wanted to be found. That evening, Samuel rode his bicycle through the drizzle to Riverside Lane. The houses were old, some abandoned, but number 12 stood firm, ivy crawling up the porch rails, curtains drawn, a soft light still glowing inside. He knocked. The door opened slowly. An elderly woman appeared, frail but graceful, with eyes that carried both the weight of years and the softness of memory. "Yes?" she asked, cautious. Samuel removed his cap. "Sorry to bother you, ma'am. I was helping clear out the old post office and found this. It's addressed to you." He held out the envelope. Eleanor stared at it, her hand trembling as she reached for it. "Who?" Who sent it? Someone named James Harland, he said quietly. The world stopped. Her knees weakened, and she clutched the doorframe. James, she whispered. After all these years. Samuel helped her inside and watched as she sat down, eyes fixed on the letter like it was a ghost. For a long time she didn't move. Then, with a slow breath, she broke the seal. The paper inside was brittle, ink faded but legible. Eleanor's lips quivered as she began to read aloud, her voice barely above a whisper. My dearest Eleanor, if this letter reaches you, it means I finally found the courage I should have had years ago. I left you not because I stopped loving you, but because I thought I wasn't enough. I thought I'd spare you a lifetime of disappointment. But I see now that I only spared myself the truth. You were my home, and I walked away from it. If you can forgive me, even in silence, I'll know. Because love like ours doesn't fade. It just waits until time catches up. Yours, always, James. Her hands shook as she finished. The tears came freely, quiet, grateful, unstoppable. Samuel said softly, He must have loved you very much. She smiled through tears. He did, and I loved him more than I ever told him. She folded the letter carefully, placed it beside an old photograph of them, and whispered, You made it home, James. You finally made it. The next morning, the neighbor knocked but received no answer. Through the window, she saw Eleanor sitting in her chair by the window, sunlight falling across her face. The letter rested in her hands. She was gone, peaceful, smiling, as if she'd just finished a conversation that had been waiting half a lifetime. When Samuel came by later, he saw her Bible open on the table. Inside was the photograph, a young couple laughing beneath a tree. Beneath it, in her handwriting, a note. He finally wrote back. Weeks passed. The old post office was torn down, replaced by a new town library. During the construction, Samuel returned to the site and buried a small metal box beneath the oak tree in the courtyard. Inside it were two things, a copy of the letter and the photograph. He didn't tell anyone. Some things don't need an audience. They just need a witness. Years later, a gardener found the box while planting flowers. The town decided to display its contents in the library lobby, framed under glass. A plaque beneath it read, For the words that waited, and the hearts that never stopped listening. Time has a strange way of delivering what we thought was lost. Sometimes it takes a day, sometimes it takes a lifetime. James' letter never reached Eleanor when it could have changed their lives. But maybe it reached her exactly when it was meant to. Maybe some words are too heavy for their moment, and time holds them until the heart is ready. We spend so much of our lives waiting for the right time to speak, to forgive, to love, as if time will wait for us. But it won't. Because one day the rain will fall, the letter will slip away, and the words you never said will become someone else's story to discover. So write it now, say it now, forgive now, before your own letter becomes the one that never reached them. Because love doesn't vanish when it's lost. It lingers, waiting, whispering, hoping that someday someone will finally open it.